Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. We're here with Alex Makarski. He is an engineer turned marketer. He's the founder of ClickMakers.io and the co-founder of MeasureBit.com. So we're going to be talking today about big data, about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so much more, especially what Alex and his company have pioneered and innovated. So Alex, glad to be speaking with you again.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, and thanks for reminiscing about the old times, like when we used to attend some industry seminars in the early marketing days.
Yes, and that happens every now and then. You get a connection and you're like, man, that person's from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and it just goes to show how important it is to do some of that reaching out, that in the moment you say, well, should I go on this podcast? Should I join that mastermind? Should I go to that event? And even though you might see like, well, what's the immediate gain of that? But there's long-term benefits, and it's worth getting out there because you never know how those connections will pay off, including today, 15 years later, we're here on a podcast. So what have you been up to? What's your big talking point?
Well, what we have been up to is, well, we have a bunch of engineers who happen to run traffic. So we are a very technical, very data-driven media buying team. Our drug of choice, so to speak, Google. We are a premier partner. We get some pretty amazing support from Google, although they get a little crazy with, their KPIs that they're trying to push on us as an agency. So have to consider, do we want to remain in the partnership with them or not? Like if we want to continue to look after our clients and not after Google's shareholders' interest necessarily. And several years ago, we spun off a data company, MeasureBit, and we stitched together Frankenstein monsters and put together Humpty Dumptys that most websites are these days. It's all about conversion tracking, attribution, collecting data, data taxonomies and data governance and building data warehouses and enabling decision making. And a big part of, you mentioned artificial intelligence and machine learning. Well, artificial intelligence is the term we like to kick around these days. I'm hesitant to use it because it's machine learning is the correct way to refer to it. Everyone thinks about generative AI since GPT went online. Like everyone's got to go over all these things that AI can do for us, like writing poetry and coming up with new images, which are amazing. And I'm sure a lot of this stuff is going to sneak its way into our ad work as well. But for us digital marketers, data has been, where machine learning has been a big thing like for the last over 10 years, probably. Like ever since Google came out with smart bidding, like we've been using some version of machine learning. We've been delegating a lot of work that we used to do as media buyers back in the day. Like a lot of this icky, mechanical, recurring, nasty, spreadsheet stuff that we used to do, and now that stuff is being done by machines. And I'm sure in the coming year or two, a lot of stuff that we do right now will shift to the machine as well.
Fantastic. And so you're touching on some things that are they at the same time hurt my head, but I hear a lot where there's a lot of hype and buzz about artificial intelligence as if it's some magic box. And then there are people like you who say, well, it's a big database, right? They have just like all this, these huge data warehouses, and they have enough of it built up where they can do the like Chat GPT, which is predictive text. You say peanut butter, what comes after, and it says jelly. And then there are those things such as like you hear about like Walmart has all this decision making where they say, well, if there will be a hurricane in some area, then you stock up on a lot of Pop-Tarts. So it looks like magic, but then, and even though Mid-Journey, it's like that creates all the stuff out of thin air, but then people say, well, there's all these issues of like stock photography because they just have these huge image libraries. So it kind of takes a little bit of the magic out of it because people like you say, well, it's machine learning. They just have like so much data built up that it can just kind of search through its database and combine all these things. And so, but then there's also kind of, we're on like the brink, right? We're at the point now where a lot of the AI that we've already been using, but people haven't realized is now going to be asserting itself more. So how does that look like with all these things that you mentioned about like, conversion tracking and everything like that? Like, what has you excited about what AI and machine learning will do for us in these coming years?
Well, everyone's afraid that they're going to lose their job, and a lot of jobs will go away. But we, as media buyers, we actually experience that. Like, we're still around. We're still doing something that adds value to the relationship between an advertiser and a network, like Google or Meta or Pinterest or whatever. We still have a place, but what we do today is going to change again, because that's what machines enable us to do. They make us more efficient, more productive. They reduce errors that we make as humans. So there's a lot of good that they bring to the table. And I think we're at another point in history where a lot of things that we do today, and a lot of professions that have not been enabled by automation, they will become enabled. It's just no one expected the generative AI to come out on the scene so strongly and challenge creative jobs. Like, we thought it was going to be the bricklayers and the plumbers who will get replaced first, but it's the creative ones that are being replaced. Now, the part that I am, as a data geek, the part I'm excited the most about is our ability to nudge the machine learning AI algorithm that Google as is, that Meta as is, that all these major networks have become, to nudge them in the right direction by sending it more signal and less noise. A lot of people pay only cursory attention to the conversion tracking and attribution, and they think this is data that they need as decision makers in the company, or as media buyers, or as directors of growth, or CMOs, or any of this marketing related position. But good data goes way beyond that these days. In the past, like, I used to the cycle of planning a campaign, launching a campaign, evaluating the results, adjusting, relaunching, getting results. So we used to go through the cycle. Now, a lot of these things happen inside the campaign itself. So the result, the outcome of a particular ad impression impacts the next ad impression, and so on and so forth. And you are not there as a media buyer, as a planner. You're not inside that auction to affect things. Like, you need to pre-train the algorithm to make good decisions on your behalf inside the auction. In that, like, each ad impression, as the page loads on your screen, like on your phone, on your computer, and there's, let's say you're loading some article, maybe Forbes article, and there's an ad on this page. So that ad is a real-time auction. There's a pretty complex machinery that's working behind the scenes, figuring out who are the advertisers that qualify to have the ad shown in this place, and which one is going to win this impression. So it's a very complex technology, and this technology is driven by machine learning these days. So if you want to win more of the right impressions, meaning you get to show your ad in front of put your ad in the right eyeballs, and the right eyeballs could be, like, at the very least, you want a human to see this ad. There's a lot of fraud online, so you have click farms, you have bots pretending to be humans. So at the very least, you want this ad to be viewable by a human being, and you want it to be someone who has intent, someone who's going to be you will be able to influence by showing your ad to take some action at some point, right? So that's what the result you look into effect, and all this stuff needs to be done by the machine today. So the better the data that you send to the machine to train the machine about the outcome you're looking for, the better this machine will do this job for you, like inside the auction. That was quite a mouthful, but
it was a mouthful, but that's good because it gives us different things to pick up on. And so they have that phrase, garbage in, garbage out. And probably a couple of times a week, I watch different YouTube tutorials on like how to use this or that AI tool. Because as you know, there's so many. There's, like, you give it this sentence and then it creates a whole video for you that you can just use. And so, but with all these kind of AI tutorials, like demoing this or that tool, it seems like the common thread is they say use AI as your co-pilot. Don't just be afraid of it and say it will take your job. Adapt to what you were doing and use AI to like 10x your productivity. So that way you're kind of being buddies and it's helping you along in the process. So that's kind of a big lesson I'm getting from what you're saying here as far as like working with it. And another lesson I'm getting from just kind of your data geek philosophy, as you said, is just how we need to be knowing what our data is, looking at our data, and then like having some goals and having some numbers instead of just saying, okay, I've got this ad campaign, I've created it, cool, my job's done, or maybe time to cycle around. You say, no, like you need to be knowing what these numbers are and like actually knowing about your traffic and knowing about these conversions and running these different split tests and doing these ads and just like being aware of all of these factors, so that way you're not just playing a guessing game, so that way you can compete with all this arms race that's happening. And so to help us kind of get a feel for what it is that you and your company do you have any fun stories to share with us? Because the numbers are okay, but what's really exciting is when you tell us, I had this client, this was the problem with their e-commerce setup. I did and changed this with their system, and then there was this result. So what do you have along those lines as far as just some before and after?
Yeah, I have plenty of stories, but let me just address a few things that you picked off this mouthful that I blurred out before. So I want to simplify a few things. In the marketing world of yesteryear, we would look at how much we make per sale and how many leads it takes to get one sale. Let's say we make $2,000 from a conversion and it takes 10 to get one conversion. So the direct response math says that each lead is worth $200 to us. Now that philosophy used to work back in the day pretty well, but now it's incorrect, because now you have to remember that you have one lead worth $2,000 and 9 leads worth exactly 0. And it's important to be able to probabilistically estimate like which leads are good and which ones are not. What most media buyers do, and what most companies do, most advertisers do, is that they fire a conversion event on every opt-in or every phone call that is a lead that they receive. The problem is there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of click farms, a lot of bots. So you want to know like when it's not a good lead and not fire the conversion, or at least not fire it for the full event value. Because if you say, hey, Google, thanks, you just made me $200, which is what you're essentially doing when we firing conversion event for a lead, like Google will say, great, I'll get you more of those $200, so to speak, leads. But if those leads are garbage, Google will go and find you more garbage. It's like, artificial intelligence has the word intelligence in it. The other type of intelligence we know is animal intelligence. Let's say you have a new puppy in your house. How do you get the puppy to crap outside and not in the carpet in the middle of your living room? Well, the first thing you do when he makes a pile in your living room, you don't give him a doggy treat, right? That's the very first thing you do. So similarly, if Google sends you garbage, don't reward Google. Don't sprinkle that happy juice into Google's brain. Like, hey Google, like you're essentially sending Google a thank you note, right? Saying, hey Google, you made me money. If Google gave you garbage, you have to basically decouple these things and insert some type of a mechanism by which you stop firing conversions for bad leads. That's a very important component, because you essentially can train the algorithm. You can teach it bad habits. And that's the last thing you want to happen in your media account.
Yeah, and
so
that's
tell you how this works.
Huge.
You asked me about
because
some story.
I was just going to say real quick, I want to get back to it. Like that's huge, because like you hear about that, about cleaning your leads, cleaning your list, and like if someone opts in, run it through some API or like see if they're from some junk IP address or some junk email address. And so so you hear about that, but this is interesting, because now you're saying connect it with your conversion tracking, because of Google's machine learning, you're training it. So people always talk about like throwing out the bad leads, but this is cool because you're saying don't just stop there, don't just throw out the bad leads, but also factor that in with your reporting back to Google, so that way they're not just giving you more junk. So it didn't mean to interrupt you, but like that's where the brain gears were turning.
But let me dig a little bit more into this. Like, since we decided to jump into this rabbit hole, it's no longer a batch process. Yes, qualifying your leads and throwing away the bad ones before they reach your sales team is important. But you want to do it instantaneously inside that conversion process. Like you want to insert something to your conversion process. Like maybe you delay that conversion firing and wait until your sales team validates this lead, and then only then do you fire conversion. Or maybe you kick off an API call, like you said, to a third-party database or to your in-house database, and maybe use a machine learning model, maybe use historical CRM data to build a machine model for a predictive model that tells you how likely this lead is to become revenue and how much revenue, like based on a bunch of parameters that you can append to that data set, right? So there's a whole bunch of different things you can do, but the key thing is the immediacy, because like if you're gonna spank this puppy or you're gonna stick his nose to his own poop, like you have to do it immediately, not a month from now, because he's not going to be able to connect those events to each other, right? If you're going to give him a doggy treat for doing a good thing, if we ask him to go outside, you want to give this doggy treat immediately. He needs to be able to connect, create this connection in his brain that those two things are connected. Every time he asks to go outside, he's going to get another doggy treat. And outside is nasty. It's windy and cold and there's rain. Like it's so easy to make a pile right here because it's right here inside, right? So Google is going to do a similar thing. Like if you keep rewarding it, instead of going, like everything has become multi-channel. Like that's a big change. Like it kind of creeped up on us, and not a lot of people talk about it. But the nature of media buying has changed a lot. By, you know, we used to buy just search, we used to buy just display, just video, and those things were exact and precise. Each network was different. Now we're buying one big thing, like we're just handing over a credit card to Google and saying, hey, Google, go find us a bunch of needles and a bunch of haystacks. We don't care which haystacks you go to, just find us those needles. And Google is going to go and bid on, within the same campaign, is going to grab some impressions on display, from video, from Gmail, from Google News, and from search and from shopping. But search auctions are very expensive, very hard to win. Display, very easy to get some impressions on, and that's where a lot of those fraudulent clicks are going to come from. So you want to force Google to go into those hard to win, high intent, very high value auctions and win those for you, and not just grab you leads from those crappy places. So that's the doggy treat metaphor. That's where it comes in.
I love it. That's a nice metaphor. And you're telling us to go multi-channel, and then you're also tapping into this new, not super new idea, but different than 10, 20 years ago, is the idea of being real time. And I was just on a call with a vendor a few hours ago, and we were talking about, like, we've got this system and we've got to report over to this other system. And they were saying, oh, well, you can dump things into an Excel spreadsheet and email this, and this other person reformats and uploads them. And we're just like, it needs to be real time when we're having all these things talking to each other. Yeah. We can't have this data that's 2 weeks older than that data, because it just doesn't work. And up until a few years ago, this whole idea of instant real time, it felt like a luxury. But then now with all this automation and all these just trying to make decisions and trying to make all these things run at the same time, it seems ridiculous to not be real time. And so along those lines, you've seen all these things change, all these things happen. You mentioned even how what happens, especially with artificial intelligence, came sooner than we expected it. Has anything really shocked and surprised you, like in dealing with these clients or seeing these new innovations? Like, what's really just made you sit up and take notice and just change your mind about things?
Well, the biggest thing is the multi-channel thing that you mentioned. It's not that I encourage someone to go multi-channel. That multi-channel thing is something that is given to us and we have no choice. Like Google is becoming multi-channel, Facebook has become multi-channel, Bing is multi-channel. Like Bing, as of February of this year, you can no longer opt out from getting your search campaigns auto-expanded to the Bing audience network. Meaning when you launch a search campaign, you're buying some search, possibly, but you're also grabbing a whole bunch of impressions, probably thousands of impressions from sites like MSN and from a whole bunch of other, like tens of thousands of websites on the Microsoft Audience Network. Google Performance Max is the ultimate multi-channel campaign. You just load a few assets and it runs everywhere. YouTube is, as of it's almost 2 years now that they went multi-channel. It used to be just by videos a true view of what happened video inside the stream. Now on YouTube with the conversion and a little bit of stream, a little bit of basically display on the YouTube inventory. It's going to grab some impressions from the Google Display Network and everywhere. So YouTube campaigns are multi-channel by default, and not only by default. You cannot, when there's no other option other than multi-channel. So that has a number of emergent properties that force us to learn how to deal with this new beast and how to modulate the response in order to nudge it in the direction that we want it to go. It's no longer, hey, I wanted to, like, you cannot you can no longer define the specific hard parameters and the boundaries and like define the guardrails for the campaign. Like, it's very loose. Like, it's all about training it for the wild world that you launch in this campaign into. So you have to pre-train it so that it knows how to behave in that wild world out there, like, or the multi-channel environment. So it's not by choice. It's something that is happening everywhere, and we just need to learn how to. You work differently with it than you used to. Like we started in the PPC world, running little search campaigns and peeling and sticking things and micromanaging things and placing things in the right little bucket. That stuff almost never happens anymore. You don't get an opportunity to do this kind of stuff anymore.
And it seems like when you hear about these huge changes in this or that platform, it's like you have no control over it. They sometimes just come out with weird and silly rules and strange changes, and there's nothing that you can do about it aside from not participating. So the only option remaining is to adapt and figure out a way to make it work for your business and know that it will probably change again in a few months. And that's just the nature of the beast. And so if someone is listening or watching this podcast and they say, okay, Alex is really tapped into these all these different trends with media buying and with traffic and with ads and all this stuff, and they want to know how they can take the next step. They want to know if their company is a good fit for you to work with them and everything else. What should they know? How do they know if they're a good fit for you? And where's your website? What's the next step?
The next step would be to reach out to me through LinkedIn, on Twitter. I'm on both. Facebook, you can find me there, or email alex@measurebit.com. So our job, like, we essentially are engineers. Several of our guys have degrees in machine learning. So what we do is look at your data. We understand how this data is being fed back into your advertising networks, and we come up with a game plan. We come up with some recommendations about how to improve this whole training. So if you have a dog that you've pre-trained, like, we need to, like, maybe you've been able to keep this dog on the leash, but what's happening now is that that leash is going away. Like, that these networks are taking the leash away. So the dog, you need to let the dog out and know that this dog is not going to immediately start chasing cars, right? So that's a job to figure out, how you've been training your dog, and if the leash were to go away, how did it behave outside?
I love
so
it.
To speak.
Yeah, and it seems like it requires a specific type of thinking, which you are good at, of saying, okay, well, we've pre-trained the dog in this way, and we need to see if the dog is maybe trained incorrectly and correct different things. And so it takes that team of those engineer-minded people in order to have the correct thinking in order to fix those problems. So alex@measurebit.com, and then Alex Makarski on LinkedIn. That last name is spelled Makarski. And then your websites are clickmakers.io and measurebit.com. And as we're winding down our conversation here, Alex, I always find it fun to put my guests on the spot and ask them about what advice they'd wish they received 20 years ago. So does anything come to mind when I ask, what advice do you wish you'd received 20 years ago?
What I wish someone 20 years ago told me that I need to lean more into my area of my natural talents, my unique abilities. 20 years ago, I decided I was going to be a marketer, and I abandoned my technical background. I had a career in IT. I was a CTO of a consulting firm. I managed 3 developer departments. And then I learned about marketing, and I thought, that's the thing I'm going to do. And it's only later on, like when I combined my marketing knowledge and my technical background, when things started to fall into place. So don't be afraid to lean into your natural talents. I wish someone smacked me back then, like 20 years ago. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, lean back into that.
I love that. They call that strengthening your strengths, or they call it niching down, when you combine those things and you become a unique person, where person A solves this problem, person B solves this problem. You say, hey, I'm Alex. I'm in the intersection of these two things. And so there are exciting times ahead for both of us, and especially for you. Yeah, full stack engineer. So clickmakers.io and measurebit.com if you think that you and your company are a right fit for that, or if in general you're interested in these trends of AI, machine learning, media buying, etc., then check out Alex and his website. You're going to love it. And make sure that you contact him, as we said, on LinkedIn, and also email him, alex@measurebit.com. If at the very least, say, I like what you had to say in the podcast, and get that conversation started. So alex@measurebit.com. We'll see you there. And thank you, Alex, for showing up and reconnecting and giving us some cool insights and stories. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.